How's it going, everybody? It's Classical Greg here. I know we're all cooped up in quarantine, so I wanted to share my playlist of music that I'm going to listen to today as a means of escaping the house that I am currently in and have been spending quite a bit of time in, as I hope you have been spending in your homes. So what I've got here are 5 symphonic pieces of music and also 5 recording recommendations that I'm going to make, and you can find all of these recordings on YouTube, and I'm going to leave links for all this stuff in the description. Okay, so number 1, I think, can apply to many of you who are trapped in a city. It's called Quiet City, and it's by Aaron Copland, who, of course, is a legendary American composer and was described by Leonard Bernstein as being the dean of American composers. And this piece was written in 1939 as incidental music to a play by Robert Shaw. And the instrumentation is quite unique. It's all strings with 2 solo instruments, those being the English horn and the trumpet. And as you listen to this piece, you will probably be struck by Copland's compositional style. And I always think it's amazing how there are some composers, when you put on their music, you can instantly tell it's them, and Copland is one of those composers. The harmonic language is very abstract. The piece has kind of ups and downs. It doesn't have a real crazy type of climax in the piece. It just sort of does its thing for about 12 minutes. And I love this piece of music. It really it inspires you to use your imagination, to walk down an empty city street and let your imagination take over and enjoy the sights and the smells and enjoy the unique feeling of having your thoughts to yourself in an empty city, which is an experience that we get to have now thanks to coronavirus. So the recording I like is by Leonard Bernstein, the New York Philharmonic, and the soloists are Thomas Stacy on English horn and Philip Smith on trumpet. And these are both amazing musicians that I actually had the pleasure of hearing on a regular basis when I was an usher at the New York Philharmonic for several years. I unfortunately never got to hear Leonard Bernstein perform, but these 2 musicians I did get to hear on a regular basis. And before we go any further, I just want to encourage you to smash the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. We are going to have tons of fun talking about classical music, exploring different compositional styles, talking about what it means to be a conductor and a musician. So if that sounds good to you, then come along for the journey. And now back to the video. So number 2 would be an opera by Mozart called The Magic Flute. And if you're new to opera, I think this is a great one to start with because it's a comic opera, the music is fantastic, and it's not too long, so that's another positive. And this version that I'm going to recommend is by legendary filmmaker Ingmar Bergman, a Swedish filmmaker, who created this version for broadcast television, I think in the 70s or 80s, I can't remember. And this adaptation is so incredible. I really lack the words to describe it. I used to watch it as a child, and I was just enraptured by his imagery and the storytelling, and there's just something so unique about this production that everybody must see this. It's on YouTube. I'm going to leave a link to it. And what he does, what Bergman does in this version, is he kind of almost parodies a live opera, including, you know, everything we love to hate: the bad lighting, the creaky noises from the set being moved around and everything. And then he kind of brings you in to the stage, and you see this piece of music really play out as though it were a true story, and it's very touching. So number 3 is by Hector Berlioz. It's his Symphonie fantastique, written in 1830. And this piece of music, for those of you who know, it follows the story of an artist who is very disturbed, and he takes a lot of drugs in an attempt to commit suicide. And he doesn't take enough, so instead of dying, he falls into this trance and goes on this sort of vision quest. And it's a really spooky and bizarre and beautiful piece of music that, for me, never gets old. It's a bit of a love-hate with this piece of music, so I happen to love it. I hope you do too. And the version I'm going to recommend is conducted by Charles Munch and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Okay, number 4, Debussy, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. This piece of music is truly one of the revolutionary turning points in quote-unquote modern music. At least it was described that way by none other than Pierre Boulez, who had quite a few things to say about contemporary music in the 20th century, so there you go. This piece really just gives you notice right up front that it's going to be spicy. It starts with this tritone that gets outlined by a solo flute, and the tritone is an interval in music which was known in medieval times and in Renaissance times as being almost like the devil in music. It's a very dissonant interval, and it's something that most composition teachers will tell you not to do. So Debussy was a rule breaker, and he always said, you know what, I'm going to do it. I do what I want. I have a big forehead. So lastly, oh, I forgot. The recording I would love you to listen to is conducted by Leopold Stokowski and the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I can make a whole different video on Stokey and his style in Philadelphia, because he's a fascinating conductor and a fascinating story for another time. So finally, J.S. Bach, Brandenburg Concerto No. 1. He wrote 6 of them in a set in when was this stupid thing written? I think it was early 1700, 1721, that's right. It was a commission that Margrave of Brandenburg, Christian Ludwig, gave to Bach. Unfortunately, he never paid Bach or acknowledged the receipt of the music and never performed it, and it sat in a dusty room for about 100 years. So, thanks a lot, Christian Ludwig. You're a dummy. But luckily, this music survived, and there's some history to it, which is quite interesting and deserves its own video. But each of these 6 little mini concertos are not solo instrument concertos per se, but concertos for a small group of varied instruments. And these pieces demonstrate a tremendous variety of sound and timbre and tone color and compositional intrigue. And it was a bit of an international collection of dances and styles from all over the place, and in fact from all over Bach's career, because he sort of copied himself and stole music from other compositions to put into it. But that's not to say that it was an unoriginal work, far from it. He just happened to use a lot of the music from other things he had written. He liked to recycle, what can I say? My recommendations as far as recording goes, I couldn't find that much on YouTube that I liked too much, but there's a video of the Freiburg Baroque Orchestra, which is pretty good, which I'll link. And I also found a really fascinating synthesized version by Carrie Meltz, and this is really cool. In fact, if you want to listen to synthesized versions of Bach, there is a composer named Wendy Carlos who used to create these switched on Bach albums, which are not available on YouTube, but you can find them in other platforms. And they are MIDI versions of a lot of different classical masterpieces, and they're fantastic. Highly recommend. Okay, that's all for today. Enjoy this recommendation for your playlist, and I will catch you soon.